Big up, everybody. Welcome to the Wolf Den, episode 6. I have the greatest of pleasure in the second time today to welcome my guest, Warren, Mr. Warren's Team Talk, to my channel. A very nice man, a gentleman in every sense of the word, and a very, 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 very good content creator. How are you today, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks very much, and thanks ever so much for asking me on Wolfgang. I really appreciate it, and very honoured to be here, mate. To be honest.
I think the honour's all mine, to be honest. I think you're a top-notch dude. Top guy and very friendly. We were just talking backstage.
Mm.
I have a great respect for the way you conduct yourself, and there's what's the old saying? A scholar and a gentleman. I believe is the old expression, and I think that sums you up pretty well because you're calm, you're relaxed, and you try to be nice to everybody. So I can't really fault you for that.
Thank you.
Nah, my as I said, my pleasure. The honour's all mine. And a massive football fan you are. And let's get into the nitty gritty of it. When you were a young man,
Yeah.
do tell me, who did you support?
Well, when I was very young, I was about 5. I see. I don't even remember how I got into football. I was that young, right? And I remember one day I was sat in my bedroom and I had this like ladder thing. It was like a wall chart, and it had like these stickers for each football club. And each week, like you'd be able to move these stickers up and down the wall chart depending on where they were in the league table. So it was a pictorial representation of the league table, right? For all 4 divisions, each team had a little sticker. I remember I was sitting there playing with this thing, and my dad come in to me and said, "Right, if you want to choose a team, I'll take you to go and see them." I was about 5, I think, 4.5, something like that. And this was early 1972, mid 1972 that this happened. And he said, "But make sure it's a London team, right? So that we don't have to travel too far to get there, because I live in Kent, right? And we did at the time." So I said to him, "Okay, I'll choose Arsenal then." So that's how it all started, and that's why I've got the North Bank behind me, um, the old Highbury, and I was an Arsenal fan growing up, and still am really, but I'm just not very happy with the direction the club's moving in. To be
Mm,
honest, I just think it's this all this Arteta stuff and all the rest of it. It, I just find it really confusing. I really do. But
no,
that that's how it all started for me.
well,
Um, and I've seen a lot of good times. I've seen a lot of bad times, and a lot of
yeah.
confusing times, which is
Well,
what it is at the minute for me. Do you know?
well, I was just about to say actually. It's funny you said you became a football fan in '72 because Arsenal had just won the FA Cup then, didn't they?
Done won the double.
Done,
They won
yeah.
the, I think that's probably what it had something to do with, because a lot of kids when they're little they just want to like follow the successful
The
team.
team.
Do you
They
know what I
went,
mean? Because when I was at school, there was loads of kids who were Liverpool fans.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, because it was the 70s and Liverpool were just dominant in the 70s.
Still had
They
Shankly
were
before
winning
that, didn't they, in the
European
'60s?
Cups, league titles, like season in, season out. They were just like relentless.
Big,
They
big,
were like Man City are now. Do you know what I mean? It was just mental.
just better in Europe. And that's the only
Huh?
thing I'd say they are like Man City now, but I would say that Liverpool team was better in Europe because in the same time span that Pep's been at Man City, Bob Paisley had already won 3 European Cups with that Liverpool team.
Exactly.
So, because
Exactly. And this is what people don't understand about that team. That team in the 70s, they could go anywhere in Europe and get a result.
yeah, they were monsters. That was one of the best teams.
Yeah.
That Liverpool side for me, that's up there with the Liverpool side of maybe I don't know. I'm trying to. well, just the whole Bob Paisley era, really, like because it was
Mm,
just non-stop winning, like you said. But for me, that team, the AC Milan team of '85 as well, with Hullet and all them lot in there, and maybe that Nottingham Forest team as well, some of the best teams ever because it's just what they achieved. Because I respect Nottingham Forest for what Cloughy did in terms of that era to achieve what you did so quickly, so fast.
mm,
It's just he didn't even win the second division. He got promoted via like, I think it was goal difference from
mm,
the second division into the first, but Nottingham Forest. But from that point onwards, is all right, cool. We're champions of England, then we're champions of Europe, then we're champions of Europe again,
mm.
and uh, and and if that's like the equivalent of nowadays of like I don't know Sunderland coming up from the Championship, winning the Premier League the following season, and then winning the Champions League back to back. It's just kind of like when you actually look at it in modern terms, it's just kind of like, oh wow, they did that, did they? And
It's
it
insane.
was it
When
is
you
insane.
actually think about it and look into it just shows you how good a manager that guy was. It was insane. Like to get promoted from the second tier of English football to then go into the first division and in your first season win the title, right? And they didn't just like win it; they absolutely decimated the rest of the league, right? And then the following season, you then go and win the European Cup, and then the following season after that, you go and win it again.
And
It was madness. Do you know what I mean? And they were winning league cups. I think they won, I think two or three in that period as well.
yeah, because they defended it, didn't they? They went back to
Yeah,
back. Then
yeah.
then Cloughy won it later on, further down the line. So without
The,
was it
the only thing
Taylor
with him was that he never ever won the FA Cup,
Cup?
but he won, and he had this really bee in his bonnet about it. But he won Champions Leagues back to back, in like competitive in the league all the time, and it still rankles to me at this day that he never got the recognition he deserved because the FA, I don't know how the hell they never ever gave him the England job.
Watch
I do know because they like to be able to control their managers, and
yeah
they wouldn't have been able to control him.
when he retired, he said down at Ashburton Gate, he said there must have been someone bloody shrewd down there because they never gave me the job because they must have been worried about me taking over. Well, they're bloody right as well because I would have done.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, he would have done 100%, and rightly so. You
And
know.
that's something. Believe it or not, I was talking about in another stream about maybe the core of English football kind of gets forgotten because I know a lot of people pick up like people like Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp, but that's a more European style of football management. You can't forget the roots of where English football's come from. Because if I say to people, okay, Tommy Watson, Herbert Chapman, and I don't know, Brian Clough, what all three of them have got in common? They're all of them have won the English league with two different teams.
Mm,
But when you analyze it, how teams were run back then, you had to build clubs more or less from scratch back then. Like Herbert Chapman, like, me and Jez talk about this, is arguably the greatest manager of Arsenal's like whole longevity. Not because he was a tactician, like he was the greatest tactician, arguably you could argue that Arsenal had, because obviously he created what Jez calls the W formation in a shape where you get obviously the players coming down the side, which a lot of people are accommodating to modern football as wing backs and stuff like that. They provide the width going down the sides as an anchorage in midfield and all those kind of things that have come down the line and transmuted. Because I'm a Chelsea fan, but if I go to most Chelsea fans and say, "Who's Ted Drake?" they'll be like, "I don't know. Who's that? Was he an ex-player?" No, that was our first actual title-winning manager in 1955. And
mm.
they'll be like, "Oh right, okay, I didn't know that." And I was like, "I'm pretty sure you didn't, because you probably waited until the Abramovich turned up and then you started supporting them."
See, the thing is, he was one of Arsenal's greatest ever strikers.
What, Ted Drake?
Hmm.
I know. Hence
It
the
was. He scored bundles of goals for Arsenal. He was absolutely brilliant. But you're right. And Cloughy, he was just out on his own, mate. Like He also, I don't know if you know this, he won the league championship with Derby County as well.
Yep,
Another small provincial club. He
which he
bought them
built
up.
from scratch.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't a one-off. He did it a
that's,
couple of times.
that's what I said about Tom Watson, Herbert Chapman, and Brian Clough are the only three managers to win the English league, make the first division, with two
Mm,
different clubs. Because
mm,
that's the one thing that was for me more impressive about the managers back then. Because some of them, like, because when you think about Brian Clough's early success for Nottingham Forest, for example, he was getting free and Derby County for that for a matter. He was getting free transfers in, like Dave Mackay, Larry Lloyd. I think was another one who went to. I'm not sure if they Nottingham Forest got
he
him in
did.
T.
He played at Forest.
And but all these little master strokes, and you got to remember, even Bill Shankly as well, because that's one thing I have to. I think the managers of the older school are actually more interested, because if you actually, when you watch Bill Shankly talk about when Anfield gets painted in red, and he's like, when opposition players come in Anfield, I want them to be scared. I want them to know that we're gonna come for them on the pitch. You know what I mean? Like, and it's these kind of things, like, because obviously he was army drilled, so this guy wasn't playing about. Like Brian Clough,
See,
likewise.
this thing at Anfield, they have that thing up on the wall or on the top of the stairs saying this is Anfield, right? And I'm sure that he did that to play with the opposition's head. Like they'd see that and think, "Fucking hell, we're at Anfield." Do you know what I mean? And like just little things like that, man, it makes all the difference.
And Brian Clough, I love listening. I tell you what, Brian Clough, I love listening to stories about Brian Clough, like from some of it. Young man, what are you doing at my football club, son? Why are you on the pitch, son? Like some of the legendary antics that guy did, like with the infamous one to Amsterdam in the red light district, or when he'd sign a player and he'd be like, he'd ask the player, "Have you found a house in Nottingham yet?" And if he didn't like him, you probably get told, "Don't bother, son. You're not going to be here long." You know what I mean? Some of the infamous stuff that he did, like.
Mm.
But I tell you, if you get a chance for it, listen to some of the stories that Mark Crossley tells about. I love listening to Mark Crossley talk about.
The Clough is a legend, man. He really is. And there's one particular story I find really funny, but I can't tell you it on live on the air. I
All right,
can't. It's too dodgy.
all right,
You'll get the stream will get
shut.
get taken down.
All right, fair enough. Well, maybe when we go backstage again, maybe I might have to hear that one before you go.
Yeah,
Then,
exactly.
but for me, because these guys were proper man managers in terms of the expression, like, "run for a brick wall" for their manager. That's something that's only I can maybe associate Jose Mourinho with. But I know Arteta doesn't get people running through walls for him. Not sure Klopp does, and I'm not sure Pep does. But these guys would literally snap their arms off for their managers, and that was it's kind of like the old school English spirit, if you like. Yeah, we'll rather go down kicking and screaming if we're going to go down, but we are going to go down kicking and screaming. But
Exactly, and like that was the thing about Cloughy. He would be able to inspire his players and get the best out of them. Like they might come to the club and not had a particularly miraculous career before they went to Forest, but then when they got to Forest, they would be unbelievable, and it's because of him and the way he dealt with people. It was just on a different level. It was he was just on another level. It was just pure genius.
well, I knew he was a special manager when Mark Crossley said that his nickname for Mark Crossley was Shithouse.
Sorry, say that again.
Mark Crossley said that Brian Clough's nickname for him was Shithouse. So when you're dealing with a guy that nicknames you Shithouse,
Yeah,
like you did, because he used to say that. He said, "I've read it, Shithouse." Like,
exactly.
it's like,
It's like that film about him, the Damned United, and he's standing there with those Leeds players, and he's like telling them they need to throw all their medals in
medals
the
in the
bin because
bin,
they won them all by cheating. And
beating.
then, like some fella had a shot, from very close to the goal, and he missed, and he's standing there shouting, "From missing from there,
there,
you
you
want
want
bloody
bloody
shooting!"
shooting.
It was really
Yeah.
funny.
I'd much rather you be sticking it in, as he says in the rest of the. Yeah, I'm a massive Brian Clough fan. So all these quote, yeah, I'll have to sit there and have another natter with you sometime about it. But yeah, but anyway, back to you, sir, not to Brian Clough. So, what's the first game you remember going to?
Arsenal against Liverpool in September 1972.
What, home?
Right? Yeah, home. It was a 0-0 draw, played at Highbury, and it was famous, this game, because the linesman got injured, right, in the warm up, right? Now, they had to make an announcement. I don't remember all this. I've just read about it after because I was only 5 and I was stood on the clock end with my dad. And I remember that they had to, reading that they had to make an announcement to try and get someone to, if there was a linesman or if a, a qualified referee in the crowd, because if there hadn't have been, they would have had to abandon the match, call the game off, because they needed to have like a referee and 2 linesmen in order for the game to go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Someone came out. The person that came out of the crowd was Jimmy Hill, because he was there to televise it. They were filming it for Match of the Day or something. So it was just madness. Like he came on and he was running the line, and it was a big, a famous incident at Highbury, and yeah, 0-0 draw. And I remember it. I can just remember like images like flash into my memory, but it was a long odd time ago. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that
So,
was my first game.
well, we'll put it this way: how much? What's the first game you remember that was a favourite that sticks out in your head? Because even when you were younger, there must have been a result at home that you must have been particularly happy with, like a, I don't know, like a 3-0 battering of Sunderland or something.
Um, right, that's a good question.
From your younger days,
I
obviously.
remember there was one. I don't know if it was the first one I remember, but I remember one game. It was a night game, right? We played Leeds in the second round of the League Cup, and it was a 2-legged game match. Right, the first leg we drew on Ellen Road 1-1, and then the second leg at Highbury we slaughtered them 7-0.
Ooh, what year was this? Because that would have been Leeds was still quite.
78, something like that, I think.
Oh, that would have been. That's just after. Yeah, that's still quite high when Leeds was still quite flying high after the referee era, then, isn't it? So that must
Yeah,
have that
they
must have stung.
absolutely destroyed them. There was their Arsenal team. They had Alan Sunderland, Frank Stapleton, Liam Brady, David O'Leary. Like all that team in the 70s, I could name the whole starting 11 for
Good
you.
team.
Yeah, so they had Pat Jennings in goal, Pat Rice right back, David O'Leary, Willie Young centre backs, left back Sammy Nelson, midfield you had David Price, you had Graham Ricks, Liam Brady, then you had Frank Stapleton and Alan Sunderland up
Sunderland.
front. It was mental.
I used to like. I used to like Alan Sunderland and
It was
Stapleton's head.
quality. It was lethal in the box. The ball came in the box and it was in the back of the net, man.
Who's it that had the massive frizzy microphone head?
Alan
Like
Sunderland.
that was Alan Sunderland, wasn't it? When he had
Yeah, he
he had
had
the
one.
microphone. He had the
Graham
big.
Ricks had one as well.
He had the big throw, didn't he? He used to puff
Yeah.
it in like a microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so I've asked that from your memories as a child. You've seen what was the worst result then? You can
Losing at
remember.
home 4-1 to Ipswich.
Ooh,
That was a lot. That was a couple of years before that, and we were standing in the North Bank, just sort of in that picture there. It was sort of just to this side of it, right? And like in the warm up, there was this fella playing for Ipswich, and he was at the other end, and he was practicing trying to lob the goalkeeper. And my dad was saying to me, "You watch, he'll try that against Arsenal this game. He's going to try it," and he did, and it came off. And yeah, they destroyed Arsenal 4-1, and it was the start of their really good era. So they had Alan Brazil, Paul Mariner, Brian Talbot, all these like really real high quality players, and they nearly won the league with that team.
Yeah, that Ipswich team wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
That Ipswich team was not a joke. It's one. That's the one thing I liked about that era of football in terms of teams used to come out of nowhere just with like
Mm.
2 or 3 players added to them, just and a new manager like would somehow just transfer. And there were a lot of. Don't get me wrong, we mentioned Cloughy and Revy and all that, they were the successful ones, but there were a lot of good teams that did punch above their weight. You know, it's
That
funny.
team, that sorry to interrupt you, that team was managed by Bobby Robson.
Great Sir Bobby.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember. I'll tell you what, it was weird actually because I'll tell you what, I never forgot how heartbroken I was actually when he resigned from Newcastle because he was all his own choice, Sir Bobby, when he resigned. Because I actually thought he might have taken them somewhere, being part of that Barcelona team with Ronaldo in it and all that kind of thing. Because I'm actually quite a big fan of Sir Bobby, but
He was an unbelievable motivator.
mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I've heard players saying it like before who've played under him that he was incredible in the dressing room, like motivating people. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
I'll tell you what, one of the greatest players ever, R9 Ronaldo, when they were down to, was it Atletico Madrid at home 2-0? And in, was it 95, 94? I think one of those 2 years. He said, Bobby Robson was like a father to me. It's because of him that I was able to do wonderful things. And that's when they scored 5 goals in the second half. And Ronaldo got a hat trick. And it was just like, wow. And that was just like one of those massive turnarounds. Because like arguably like this guy, and not many people realize this, like it's not that Bobby Robson managed some of the best players, he managed some of the greatest ever. Because when you look at that Barcelona team at 93, 94, that was just I think that was just after the Cruyff era. So all those people like Pep Guardiola are still there and all those kind of players, and those eras kind of get forgotten about nowadays because I not many people realize, but a lot of the managers we're used to seeing as like players back in the day, and it's kind of weird to take, but yeah. So you Ipswich back. What was the first time you went as an adult? Can you tell me as when you started going on your own? Because this is back in the day when it was all terraces as well.
yeah,
When it was
so
that eight.
I started going as an adult. I think when I was about 19, something like
Mm,
that. So it would have been about 1986, and it it might have been 85. I might have been 18, to be honest. But it was the year we had.
hang on. That's yes, Tony. That's it. That's why I idolized that picture, and that's why that's there. So he's just noticed that on the cover picture for this, I have a picture of Ronaldo from that Barcelona team of 94, 95 with Sir Bobby Robson holding, well, it's him making the run, but it's that same goal where Bobby Robson's standing there like, Jesus Christ, what have I just seen? So he's just,
Yeah,
in terms of the
exactly.
conversation, he's just twigged now for why that picture's there. Sorry about that. I just wanted to
No,
clear that up. Sorry about that. But yeah,
no,
sorry,
it's fine.
you were saying, yeah, so yeah, it's the
So
first.
actually, it might even have been when I was 17. I'm just thinking about this. Could have been 80, about 85, I think. And I remember Don Howe was manager, and we had a team. We had Tony Wilcott, we had Paul Mariner, we had Charlie Nicholas, Kenny Sansom.
Good team.
I'm not sure if Viv Anderson was there or not, but Pat Jennings was still there. Yeah, it's a bit murky to be honest, but anyway, yeah. So, and I remember like I remember when Don Howe got. I think he got sacked. Other people said that he resigned, but I'm pretty sure he got sacked because I remember there was this massive demonstration in the North Bank the game after he'd gone. Whatever happened, he left the club, right? And there was this big demonstration in the North Bank over it. And I've never ever seen anything like it at Highbury. The whole of the North Bank were chanting at the board, Donny loves the Arsenal, you don't, stuff like this. And it was going on for ages and ages and ages, and it was really loud. And yeah, there was this big demo, and then, but when my first game was as an adult, it's difficult to know really.
Well, what's the first one you remember?
First one I remember. Probably just trying to think. Maybe well actually I went oh this is a mad one, right? My neighbours were Middlesbrough fans, right? Town where Brian Clough was born and grew up, right? And I went with them to watch Arsenal play Middlesbrough in the FA Cup in January 1983 in the third round, right? And it was a cold day. I had a big heavy coat on, and we were in the home end at Middlesbrough, right? Middlesbrough don't like Arsenal fans at all. They can't stand them. Absolutely hate Arsenal with a passion.
Certain Forest fans do as well. Still hate Arsenal quite a lot.
Huh?
I said certain Nottingham Forest fans still hate Arsenal quite a lot as well. Those are
I
old school rivalries.
really. Yeah,
Yeah,
see, that might stem from Cloughie, I suppose, because he didn't like Arsenal.
no.
And I think it's to do with his Middlesbrough roots. Now, where this all comes from, I do not know. I've tried to find out. I asked my neighbours about it, and they wouldn't talk to me about it. Whenever I asked them about it, they would just say, "Oh, it's a long time ago now, Ron. Let's just not bother talking about it," and they would just brush it under the carpet, you know. But anyway, so there's this game at Ayresome Park. It's the first one I can remember. Arsenal lost the game by 3-2. Before the game, we'd been in the pub, right, just down the road from the ground. And right, when we went in, before we went in, like my neighbour said to me, "Whatever you do, don't open your mouth." Right? We got in the pub. One of them said to me, "Warren, what would you like to drink?" I was thinking, "Fucking hell, you told me not to say anything." So I answered, and there was this huge, like, Middlesbrough fan. And he goes, "Oh, yes, there's a Cockney behind me." And I was thinking, "Oh, no, here we go. It's going to kick off." And then he just turned around to me and he goes, "Listen, mate," he said, "you're all right. Don't worry. But whatever you do, do not go down the end of the pub, that far end of the pub, because they'll rip you to shreds." So he was quite happy for me to stay where I was, but he was sort of trying to look out for me. I thought it was decent of him. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it was. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because you
And
obviously
then
know.
I ended up in the home end. Middlesbrough won the game 3-2, and it was an absolute nightmare, mate.
Oh, bless.
Yeah, but I was only 16.
Well,
No,
that's
I was how old was I? So it would have been 83. Yeah, so it would have been coming up to 16.
well,
Well,
that's
no,
what.
it's gone 16. Sorry.
Well,
So it's
that's what.
January 84.
Well, that's what I mean. It's that must have been nerve wracking as a 17-year-old. You've gone or a 16-year-old. You've gone to away and you don't even know why they hate you, but they're so willing to kick your teeth in. So it's
Yeah,
definitely one of those. Because I tell you what, I got a similar story. But when I was a young and like in the 90s, because a lot of Premier League teams back then, and this was when obviously the first few years the Premier League was formed. Back in those days, if the grounds weren't filled out, a lot of the Premier League teams used to flog their tickets for under 16s for a quid. I'm not sure if you remember that, but I used to go to West Ham. I used to go see, like, it was funny because I've seen Arsenal play West Ham. I've seen at home. I've seen Man United play West Ham at home, and some of these other teams like Liverpool. And I didn't spend more than 20 quid going to about 20 games. It was hilarious because I had a mate called Charlie. She was a big West Ham fan, and she always used to like drag me out to the home games and stuff like that. And she was like, "Come on, Simon, you love the experience," and I did. And I did love the experience because there's my three local teams are obviously round the corner. Is I've got Leighton Orient down the road. Going down Brisbane Road is always fun. If anyone if anyone knocks lower league football, tell them that you'll find better atmospheres of lower league football than you will in Premier League teams right now, because it's still more the old roots of the areas more than it is popularity. And but the amount of times like I come out of Upton Park, and it was always the rowdy bunch. You had to stay away from, like, there was always even the West Ham fans knew there was a certain group of people that you had to stay away from, because obviously, like, you always get some fans that even if they were outnumbered, they were always a bit shirty and fruity, shall we say? And like, they didn't matter the fact they were outnumbered. So I have to say, some West Ham fans and some they just go to fights. This is back in the 90s, so they were there just for a punch up, really. They were, if the result went badly for their team, that was just who was going to get upset. Really, it was just a matter of time. But quite often, obviously, they would sneak off and have a brawl away from the police and stuff like that. But it was just because I'm not even a fan of either team. I'm a Chelsea fan. I just happened to go because some girl invited me, and I got some Man United fans looking at me like, "I'm going to stamp your head in, mate." And it's just like, dude, I don't even support the team you just played.
That business of charging kids £1 to get in, I think it's a really good idea. I
Well,
do, because the reason I'm saying that is because if you get them young enough, then they're likely like to stay with you. Do you know what I mean? And it's
mhm,
easy for them to get access to like watching proper football. And
of course.
what you said about lower league football is 100% right. Do you know what I mean? It's like I call it proper football because it is. Do you know what I mean? There's no prima donnas or stuff like that. You know.
I enjoy it a lot more because I'm not being funny. One thing about it is you don't hear the songs sung as much at bigger like league teams now. I don't know. Maybe it's just the nervousness of how important it is. I don't know. But yeah, for me, it's just always more like a carnival atmosphere. I think when you go places like Derby and Nottingham Forest and places like that, maybe where it hasn't spread too much, you still get the original, what I would call proper football atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's the singing before the game, there's the singing during the game, there's singing after game. That it's kind of disappeared a bit in London actually when it comes to the bigger teams. I know.
So
So,
I've been to Brisbane Road, mate. It's a quality place.
I love the O's.
Before the seating got put in and whatnot, I
Yeah, it's
liked it.
terraces.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't realize as well, especially younger fans, that these grounds used to hold a lot more than what they used to. And they're like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, look at Anfield, for example. They used to squeeze 100,000 people in there.
Yeah,
Oh, but how did they manage to do that? Because there was no seating. It was all terrace. It was all you just used to stand there and watch the game.
yeah.
Even at places like Chelsea and stuff like that. Before Stamford Bridge was redeveloped, that was a 60,000 stadium. People would just stand.
Mm.
Oh right, okay.
So you see this like picture behind me? That's the old North Bank of Highbury, and
Hmm.
that's terracing there. So you
Yeah,
can
it is.
see like the people would just have to go in. There was no seats. We just have to go in and stand up.
Hmm. And if
Do you
you're
know
too
what I mean? And
if you're
they'd be
too
able to
small,
cram in a lot more people.
well, I tell you what, if you were too small and you couldn't see, mate, you were fresh out of luck. Unless you got on unless you were on someone's shoulders. Because I
Yeah,
remember, I'll never forget actually, Steve Hodge, former Nottingham Forest player. He said about he used to go down there in the heyday of Clough and stuff, and the only way he could see when he was in the terraces was by standing on a stool his dad used to bring for him. So even if he was at the back, they'd just plop the stool down and he'd just stand on it and be looking over everybody else. Yeah.
seeing that terrace, right? There's those stanchions,
Hmm.
like there's like bar and like these things like that. Mate, I used to go. There's a group of us, and one of the guys was quite small, So he would sit on the top of that stanchion. So it'd
Oh
be
wow.
yeah, and if he had to keep his balance, I don't know how he managed to do it because I wouldn't have been able to. But with that, he was then able to see, and where we used to stand, it was in the front of a big trench, so he wasn't blocking anyone's view, so he never got any grief with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, get out of there, I can't see, or anything like that, you know?
Oh, fair enough. So I gotta ask actually, right now, because obviously we spent a bit of it talking about. I want to flip something. When did you become interested in things like aliens and stuff, like all the
Oh, ever
conspiracy
since I was
theories?
a kid, about the same age as the football.
Yeah,
Like,
but what?
it's been a thing with me ever since I was tiny.
Yeah, but
I
what
remember,
fascinated you about it?
I don't know, it's because it started off, I guess, when I was real nipper, right? I used to get my dad to draw pictures of Dracula and Frankenstein and stuff like that. And it just sort of moved on from there. Then I remember, like, he had this record called Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds.
Oh, yeah, of
I
course.
Yeah, I used to keep playing it, and it fascinated me.
They
Right?
say that the chances of life on Mars are
Yeah,
millions to one. He said.
exactly. And I've now got it on CD. That same record.
Sorry, I
Right?
couldn't contain myself.
No, it's fine. But yeah, and like it just developed on. And I remember when the Americans sent that spaceship to Mars in '77. Right, I kept looking outside when I was like on the way home from school or going on to school, thinking, can't see anything. I wonder if it's kicking off up there because like there were people even then who still thought there was like a civilization up there and whatnot. You know, so
Oh yeah.
it was it was interesting, and I just like it's just grown as I've got older. It's got more highly developed. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But the thing is about it, particularly the stuff about UFOs and whatnot, is you can only get so far and then it just gets really frustrating.
Mm.
You know, you like think you're about to find something out interesting and then the door slams shut and you can't get anywhere with it. Do you know what I mean? It's just like,
Yeah.
and that aspect of it I find really frustrating. And a couple of times I've just walked away from it and thought, this is pointless. I'm never ever going to find out the truth about this. So what's the point?
Well,
But then I end up getting dragged back into it. I'll see something like
you've got
interesting.
you've got a taste for it, ain't you?
Yeah,
You know what it is. It's just like a kid in the candy shop. You taste something, you don't like it, you try and find something else.
yeah, exactly. Because it does get really frustrating, you know. And so yeah, it's like been a thing with me since I was really tiny, to be honest.
Tony, the DJ Crane says interesting that they made comparisons with artifacts found in Mexico with that in India, almost identical.
See, this is the thing, right? All these ancient cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other, all producing stuff which is almost identical. And I just think, how's that possible?
It's
See,
almost like
it's like either they came from a common source
mhm.
or that our history, as we're told it in schools and whatnot, didn't quite work that way, that it didn't go in a linear progression, that we've reached a high level of technological
Mm,
ability and then we've lost all
yeah.
our knowledge. Something's happened. We've had like huge cataclysm, and we lost all our knowledge. And then we've sort of had to build ourselves back up again, which is
Would it, would,
possible.
yeah, because I was about to say because a lot of people say about the BC and AD clock about how things have started and restarted. Because I'm not. There's even actually theories behind before the meteor struck, which wiped out the dinosaurs, that they had their own civilization of technology and all that kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
and that's been explored in certain things like Doctor Who with the Silurians and all that kind of thing, or Silurians, I should pronounce properly. But things like that fascinate me. The idea, because I like the idea of extraterrestrial, paranormal, history, and you're right. I agree with you. If you're finding so many similarities in different cultures, and they're all supposed to be thousands of miles apart with no contact with each other and no physical way of getting into each other, then the only common denominator would be someone's come along and taught both of them the same thing, extraterrestrial or not. So I do actually feel I understand where you're coming from, and obviously certain things like building techniques like the Egyptians, how did they move such massive pieces of like stone and stuff like that with little or no machinery? uh,
This is like what I find staggering. I heard someone going on about how they must have had ramps and pulleys, and then I heard Graham Hancock, who anyone who's interested in this sort of stuff should listen to his theories about ancient civilizations. The guy is just an absolute genius, right? And he turned around and he said, "Well, it'd have to be some major, huge ramp, absolutely massive, and it would still be there in order to be able to lift something up of that size." Because these things, some of these rocks and stones that they're talking about with these pyramids, the size of family-sized cars. Do you know what I mean? It's not just a little brick; it's huge, the size of a car. Do you know what I mean?
mhm.
Being that, how the hell would you be able to move something like that?
My explanation used to be back in the day they just had a big ass whip.
Oh, what?
I really like a big whip,
Yeah,
a really big whip, like, like pick that shit
yeah,
up
but
like that.
the thing is that the amount of people that it would take to shift something like that. Do you know what I
Lots.
mean? And like, it's like Stonehenge. Those rocks, they came from South Wales. So you're telling me that they dragged those rocks all the way down from South Wales to erect them somewhere in a field in the middle of Wiltshire? It just don't make any sense to me.
Well, well, in terms of not making any sense and great unexplained things, like you got things like the Bermuda Triangle, things like that, where these places are great mystery. Because that's the one thing as a civilization I find we're quite fascinated by. It's like, the idea of the unexplained. That's why we like ghosts. The idea of mystery is what keeps me interested in it. It's the idea that you don't quite fully know is probably the best way of doing it, because if you proved it one way or the other, maybe people might lose interest. All right, there's aliens, or isn't there aliens? Like, but the idea that it's still debatable, I think that's what makes it interesting, because you can look at it either one way or the other. You
Mm.
can't prove the other way wrong, if you know what I mean. So you have to look at both. Uh, for me, when it comes down to ancient cultures, yes, I think you're correct in terms of, yes, they've lost a lot of teachings. Maybe people will argue that back then they were a lot more primal and maybe more in touch with the world, because we were a
Mm.
bit more animal-like, if you like. Because obviously, like, we had to, back in the many people, but there was a time that people used to like hunt animals and hit them over the head with sticks, stuff like that to eat, and like proper like Fred Flintstone stuff, like Wilma. But it evolves, and it's just that these mysteries of life. I believe that's the expression. There's mysteries of life. You always got to keep wonderment. But for me, there definitely is aliens, because the idea that the whole out of the entire cosmos that we're the only like intelligent life in it, that's just out of these billions and billions of miles of space and planet. That's an impossibility that we're the only intelligent life. It's impossible.
Let me tell you this, right? In our galaxy alone, right, there are more stars in our galaxy, and each one of those stars has got a system of planets going around it, right? In
Solar
our
system.
galaxy alone, there are more stars than there are grains of sand on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about that. We think about all the beaches that are in the world,
Hundreds
and
of
you think about
trillions.
all the grains of sand that there must be.
Mm-hmm.
Need
Yep.
to be more star systems in our galaxy, just in our galaxy, not all the galaxies, just in our galaxy, right? Then there are grains of sand on our Earth, and that's it. That's not planets that are incapable of supporting life. That's star systems, right? Each one of those star systems will have a system of planets circling around it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it stands to reason there must be. It it
At
just
least
doesn't
one.
make
At
any
least one.
sense, huh?
I said it must be at least one intelligent life
Yeah,
form out there somewhere.
why here? Why would it happen here? Nowhere else. And we've got meteors flying around that can like destroy planets just like that. Right? It happened once with the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, and it's happened more than once as well. We've had big impacts before. And do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah. But
so
hang on 1 minute, Warren. He didn't mean those kind of impacts, Tony. He's just said 63 Earths can fit in Uranus. He didn't mean those kind of planetary impacts, mate. You've got the wrong idea. But yeah.
exactly. But the thing is, as well, there's billions and billions of galaxies as well. So it's just the problem is the distances that these civilizations would have to travel to get here. That's the problem. But then that idea about it being a problem is from our perspective and our knowledge of science.
Mm-hmm. True.
If they're able to manipulate gravity, they would be able to get here almost instantaneously.
Well, it depends on how different you believe that intellect is, because like you gave with the War of the Worlds example, they were very the Martians, and I don't know if you do you ever read the book, the full War of the Worlds book? Well, put it this way: if you actually read it, and if you look at how the people then articulated and spoke, and how it's written, and how the word is said, you'll find that back in the day, maybe people are a lot more open to those kind of ideas, because at least back then, because obviously when H.G. Wells wrote the Real World, it was coming into the 19th century, also the 20th century, excuse me, and obviously things like cars and stuff were new, like steam engines and stuff were new, all those kind of things, but people were a lot more open to possibilities back then because they couldn't ultimately they saw so much wonderment in front of them. Where nowadays people, even though they have so much, because the funny thing is, people have these things like these where they can get so much information, but they know nothing, which is weird to me. Because if you had an information box in your hand, you would expect someone to be clever, wouldn't you? But
Yeah,
not
but
nowadays.
the thing is as well, people are manipulated a lot more than were before. That's the
Yes,
problem. Do you know what I mean? Like what we're told and through the mass media, right? There's a lot more brainwashing and manipulation of people than what there ever was. I mean, like for example, back in the 19th century, there was a scientist who reckoned that he could see canals on Mars.
water, yeah, canals.
Yeah, I can't remember the fella's name, but he reckoned could see canals and whatnot. Now, obviously, that wasn't. It doesn't look like that was actually the case. He was just seeing. He was seeing something that wasn't necessarily, and his conclusions of it weren't quite what they should have been. But what I'm getting at is that the way that we're given the information isn't always
Complete.
open, and it's not completely free of bias in one shape or form. Do you know what I mean? There's
Hmm.
you know, lots of,
Take our word for it.
yeah, lots of competing, what do you call it? Agendas. And, right, so whatever you see on this thing isn't necessarily the whole truth.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I mean, this whole business about what's been going on, I was banging on about for a few months about what happened with the US Congress and the UFO phenomena, right? That whole thing, it just highlights it in a nutshell, because you've got the whole of the American Defense Department trying to stop all this information coming out, and then you've got the US Congress pushing really hard to get it out. So there's
Mm.
this huge conflict. So for years and years and years, we were told, oh, there's no such thing as aliens, and it's all like nonsense, and it's like weather balloons, clouds, and gas stuff, and all this nonsense. And if the truth be known, aliens, in my opinion, they've had contact with planet Earth since the day dot, since the planet came into existence. Do you know what
Arguable.
I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is
Arguable.
what I've said about people controlling the agendas, being able to control what people are told and are
Mm.
able to read
Yeah.
or get information about. So, even now, I was watching um, earlier. I was watching Joe Rogan talking to one of the people that was in that public hearing on the US Congress, a guy by the name of David Grush.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that fella was coming out with, right, in the US Congress, they don't want him to be able to say it, and they've pushed really hard to try and stop him. You know, but
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact now he's come out and said it, they can't touch him, because if they touch him, it's going to prove that they've got something to hide.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas if he was still sort of in the shadows and whatnot, they would have been able to knock him off, and it would have, yeah, oh, some military guy had a nasty accident. He crashed his car and died, and whatnot. They would have been able to get away with that. If they did try to pull that stunt now with him now, no one's going to believe it.
Yeah, it's too suspicious.
Yeah,
It's way too
exactly. So
suspicious.
that's why he's safe. So this is what I'm talking about. So there's stuff on my other channel, Unveiling Realities, about this whole thing. And I periodically go on to Diesel Arsenal's channel,
Mm-hmm.
and I do shows on there about the unexplained, the paranormal, those sorts of things. And that I set that channel up quite recently to help me to do that stuff on
Mm-hmm.
Diesel's channel, because he loves it, I love it, so that's why we do it.
So do
And
I, by the way.
I'm working on another one at the moment. I'm working on a show about what happened with Madeleine McCann, because that,
Oh no. Oh, yeah, that's conspiracy rife. That is.
yeah, it is.
Oh,
It's a huge
oh
question
God.
marks about all of it.
How did she disappear off the face of the earth and all that kind of, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
What was it? You know, Bigfoot. The Bigfoot show was awesome. I preferred the movie Harry and the Hendersons.
yeah. He's
If you,
talking about the show that I did on Diesel's
oh
channel.
right, I was about to say.
Yeah, because I've done shows about Bigfoot. I've done it about the Bermuda Triangle. I've done it about Princess Diana. I did one
Oh,
about,
hey, wait, what about her being murdered? About Diana
yeah.
or?
I've
Oh right,
I
yeah.
did a show about Mars on there. I've done all sorts of stuff.
Sorry. Ooh.
So I've done quite a lot. I've been doing it for a while on Diesel's channel, and he, like I say, he loves it, and I do too.
Well, that, yeah, I'm quite versed in conspiracy because I know you're talking about the idea that the royal family took out Diana. Yeah, I know because of her being pregnant and stuff like that.
I
That's
definitely
actually
did. There's no
yeah,
doubt.
yeah. I already knew where you were going. As soon as you said Diana, I automatically knew what you were talking about because I'm a bit of conspiracy theorist nut as well because of Muhammad Al Fayed and all that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I've got maybe one day me and you can sit there have a chat maybe off air and talk about some of the other ones. But It's like, yeah, the thing is with the way you think the facts are released nowadays, they always say that you never told the whole truth anyway, and it's always like you find out 50 years too late. So I do agree with you what you're saying in terms of like politicians are like lawyers, like Congress is like lawyers. Half of them will show you what they want you to see and hide the other half, while the other half may show what they want you to see, but then hide what they don't want you to see. It's all
See, the
manipulation,
thing
like
is,
you said.
sorry to interrupt you, right? But the thing is, in America, it's a bit weird because the politicians are the ones who are trying to get this stuff out, which was quite refreshing for me, to be honest, after what we see going on here. But their equivalent of the Ministry of Defense and their secret services do not want this stuff coming out. And I remember hearing this American politician saying, listen, if the Ministry of Defense and all the rest of it is able to like shut this down and are able to stop us discussing this in public and letting this come out, you got to ask questions: who's running the country, us or the Defense Department? And he's spot on. They should be their Defense Department should be taking instructions from the politicians about what they're supposed to be doing, not the other way round.
Yeah, I hear what you're
And
saying.
that's what's going on.
I hear what you're saying. And there was all that thing about recently over the last few years about Brexit here as well, about how a lot of people reckon that was rigged as well, because it was like, hang on a minute, I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone who voted out.
Huh?
So no, they were saying about Brexit over here a couple of years ago, Warren, when they reckon that vote was rigged.
Hmm.
You
No,
remember
it
that?
wouldn't surprise me.
Pardon?
I said it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, yeah, because it just happened to be a coincidence. It was 59, was it 51% against 49? Oh, how convenient. They took it by
Exactly.
a split hair. Yeah, okay, no
Mm.
problem, no problem. But I will say this, sir, like, because it's coming up nearly an hour, and you did say you couldn't stay too long. So, like, would you want to shout out your channel, mate? And it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you so much for taking. I've literally been sitting and just listening to you, like, in a bit of
Thank
an
you,
awe.
man. No, I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and thank you for
Thank
letting me
you.
come on. It was
No, it's been a
brilliant.
pleasure. You want to come back again? Like, do you ever do watch alongs?
I do time to time. I don't like really doing them, right? Because I just find it a bit weird that someone want to watch someone watching a game of football.
No, no. Normally, when I do it, I normally have a bunch with us. So like, normally what I normally do is when I have a watch along, I'll see if I can get a couple of guests on as well as whatever team's being supported. Like me and Tony, we've been doing that recently. We've been having 5 or 6 of us doing a watch along. I'd be happy if one day if you joined us. Like,
No, I'll be happy to do it. See, I was doing them recently. Well, I did one recently for an FA Cup match because I do this thing on my channel, right? The beginning of the season, I pick a team out at random, right, in the real early stages of the FA Cup in
mhm,
August, right? And then I follow them until they get knocked out. And then I follow the team that knocks them
knock them
out.
out.
Yeah. Now, I sort of, after about 2 or 3 rounds, started following this team called Cray Valley Paper Mills, right?
Oh
They
yeah.
they saw the videos I was doing about them and they loved it, right? Probably because I was giving their club a lot of attention because they're quite low down the pyramid. I think they're
Mhm.
in the eighth tier of English football, right? And they were advertising the fact they were going to produce shirts. And
Your
I contacted the club and said to them, look, how do I get hold of one of these shirts that you're talking about? I really want to get one. And because it was quite cheap as well. And they said, who is it? I said, my name's Warren. And they said, what, the podcast guy? And I was going, yeah, that's right. And they said, oh, well, no, you don't have to buy it. We'll give it to you for free for all the work you've been doing for our football club.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah, they were honestly, mate, they're lovely, lovely people. And it really upset me when they got absolutely slapped the other night by Charlton. right, in that replay. They lost 6-1 at home because they went to the Valley,
Ooh.
drew 1-1, and they did really well. And to be honest, I thought in the end Charlton were hanging on, right, in that game. Then, and because I think Charlton played a reserve team or something,
Mm-hmm.
because they sort of thought, oh yeah, we'll play the reserves, we'll be able to get past them with that, and it'd be all right. But it didn't quite work out that way. Then they had the replay, and they put a lot more of the regular players in, I think, and they battered them.
Mm.
And I was just thinking, yeah, all right, don't need to rub their noses in it. Do you know what I mean? When it got to about 3 or 4, they could have just like taken their foot off the pedal, but maybe they didn't like the fact that they went to their place and nearly
And
beat them, so they thought
yeah,
they'd teach them a lesson.
yeah, embarrassment back. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Oh,
anyway, I did a watch along for that. It was all right, but like I say, I just don't get this thing about people wanting to watch people watching a football match. I think it's a bit odd.
yeah. I get that idea, but the idea is we do it in a group, so because everyone. The idea is that not only does it create a kind of like a community atmosphere, it kind of everyone bounces off each other because we've all got different personalities. It just makes it funny,
No,
to be
no,
honest.
exactly, and that's the key: keeping people entertained, making sure that it's a community atmosphere, safe, and that they can have a laugh.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like about my Saturday show because it's a safe environment. People can come in, have a chat, and have a bit of a giggle. People have sort of chatting to each other and whatnot, and it's grand. So yeah, my channel is Warren's Team Talk, as you can see there on the screen. Every Saturday I do a show. It starts at 2:30, and it's like a sort of a bit of a piss take of Sky Sports Soccer Saturday. To be honest, that's where I got the idea from because I used to love that show, and I just thought, well, let me see if I can do my own take on it.
Well, I was going
Right.
to say grandstand actually. I thought
Well,
grandstand.
grandstand, something like that. Yeah. So let me see if I can do my own take on it. And that's what it's all about. That's why I've got all these videos. When there's a goal scored, I play this
Your
video,
book one.
fireworks going off,
Yeah, yeah.
because I remember years ago at Highbury they used to have this big video screen, and every time there was a goal, I'm sure they used to have this thing where it showed fireworks going off and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. You used to get the old firework or the old stick man
Yeah,
in goal that dived one way, and then the fireworks to go up in the back, and it'll all be like the old school lighting. It was all like one light. Yeah, I remember that, mate. All
yeah.
those kind of things.
And
So
then the bookings and the sending offs, and I've recently added a new one for VAR. So I had this picture of VAR, and in the background you can hear bits of the audio
yeah,
that got
yeah.
released after the Liverpool Spurs game. It goes down,
Delay,
goes
delay,
down,
delay,
hold it,
delay.
hold it, hold it, hold
Yeah.
it. It's hilarious.
When you played that on Saturday, if you remember, I made a comment about that, about how they were going to delay their cash out of the bookies, and
Yeah,
that's what they were actually.
exactly.
That's what they were doing. Delay. Now, now.
Yeah. It's hilarious. I absolutely love it. But yeah, so that's my Saturday show. Um,
Make sure you check it out.
and I'm doing that stuff about the FA Cup. So I'll be doing something. I'll be doing stuff around the next game, Charlton against Gillingham on the 2nd of December at the Priestfield. So that'd be interesting.
Oh,
And I'm still going to do stuff about that Cray Valley Paper Mills team as
we'll,
well. I'm going to
we'll
do
keep it up.
something once a month, like people giving people an update about how they're getting on, because a lot of the people in the chat seem to really get into it. And one
We
of
do.
them was threatening to go down to the next round if they got past Charlton, that they'd go to the game at the Priestfield and go and watch the match.
Well, it seems like you got a bit of a cult following there, then.
Yeah, I like it, mate.
Yeah, why not?
So it's just a bit of a laugh, really, and I
Of
just
course,
enjoy doing it all.
of course. That's the
I
main thing.
should do more, but I just the way I do it. It's very difficult because I have all these slides and all the rest of it, so it just takes a bit of time, unfortunately.
You just do it in your own pace, mate, and as long as you're happy with it because it's your
Yeah,
stuff, that's all that
because
matters, really.
StreamYard is an absolute nightmare for displaying slides. because
Hmm.
you've put any formatting around the text or anything like that, it doesn't like it. So you have to copy the screen, then you have to repaste it in, and it's just it annoys me, to be quite frank. But it is what it is, and it's just the way I like to do it. So
You drink the Kool-Aid, Wolfie. Oh, you donut. Yeah, dear. But yeah, Warren, can I just say thank you, sir, again for spending some time here, mate. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and
I
again,
have.
and I'm glad you have, because obviously I want you to come back soon, because you're a top guy, top content creator. Again, Warren's channel, go and check that out. I'll probably put a link in the chat. Actually, I should have put a link at the top actually, in case anyone wanted to go down there. But I apologize for that. I'll sort that out in a minute. But dude, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Humbled me. I've really enjoyed that, because it's been a bit unusual as well with all the alien talk and the civilization stuff. It's not often you actually get to sit there and talk with someone about that. And it's funny because as I said, I'm a bit of conspiracy theory nut. As soon as you said Diana, I knew exactly what you're talking about and where you were leading with it. So I just thought, yeah. But dude, thank you again, and
It
thank you
was an
everyone else.
absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for coming. Big up everyone in the chat. Drop some comments. DJ Crane, obviously Tony. Thank you, sir. You always helping us out. And yeah, always showing me some love. NS Sports have been popped in and out. Georgie G. Everyone that's popped in and out. Thank you very much. And we are out of here, people. Stay safe.